Good morning, Facebook. My name is Minister Sumter, and on behalf of the Tabernacle of His Glory, I would like to welcome you to our Facebook Live message. But first, giving honor to God, who is the head of my life, I would like to thank Him for giving me my wife, the love of my life, Minister Felicia Sumter. All my fellow believers in Christ, I thank you for honoring the God we serve with unwilling devotion to His calling on me and my wife's life, so we can deliver the love letters messages to you today. Once again, it's an honor and privilege to be here, and I thank you. Now, today's message revolves around the promise that was made to Isaac. At the beginning of Genesis chapter 26, it explains the famine during the time in the land of Goshen. As we read verses 2 and 4, we see God is keeping His promise, or you can say His covenant, that He made with Abraham. See, Isaac finds himself also in the famine, just like his father. See, Isaac also, out of fear for his life, he lied to King Abimelech by calling his wife his sister. I don't know about you, but if she was my wife, I don't think that would have set well with her. But those were different times when women were not allowed to voice their opinions outright against their husband. And who would know, the king noticed it, especially in the way that they displayed their affections around each other. And now, because of his actions, a lot of misfortunes could have fell on the land because of his lie. But if he and we would have recognized God's promise, misfortunes like that could always be avoided. So the king checked him on his lie. And when I mean checked, I mean he confronted him. See, because once the truth is unveiled, then he set out a decree that no one is to touch his wife, or they will be punished by death. So even though Isaac did the same thing as his father, we see in verse 11 that God was committed to keep the covenant. Isaac, like his father, was promised the land, offering as numerous as the stars. See, Isaac farmed the land. God favored Isaac. God favored Isaac's life and made a decree that was put on him, and his family became very prosperous. Now as we jump to the event at hand that begins in verse 14, his wealth was so well known in the Philistine community, which meaning the people who is hostile and indifferent to the culture has no understanding of who they were. So they covered up the wells that were passed down to Isaac from his father Abraham. I guess you can call that throwing salt on him, aka hating on him, or you could say envying on him. Ain't that just what you think haters would do? Trying to stop what God has blessed you with and take what's they say is rightfully theirs or that belongs to you, and they try to take it? That's just like a hater. Always trying to stick his hands into something that doesn't belong to him. But then the king asked for him to move out of the area because Isaac's position was overwhelming the king's power. Or you can say his influence was switching hands. See, Isaac's influence was changing the kingdom around King Abimelech. He was getting so powerful that the king couldn't even control him. So the king had to get rid of him real quick, fast, in a hurry. So Abimelech moved him out of the kingdom, and he told him to move down out of the kingdom. So Isaac moved out, and he moved down to the valley of Goshen. Even in the valley, God can and will bless you. See, Abba, meaning father, is always looking for your obedience. See, looking back in Egypt could cause you to miss what God has in store for you right now. Even if the enemy is against you, they are no match for our Father. Or you can say, our God. But now let's move along. Because now Isaac gets down into the valley of Gosher, and he opens up one of the wells. All right, that his father had left him, that they covered up, them haters covered up on him. So he opened it up, and would you believe, water started pouring out. All right, and the herdsmen around the Philistine, around Gosher, they saw it. They saw it, and it was continuously pouring. And the herders pitched a fit, saying that the well belonged to them by right. So you know what Isaac did. He already knew his promise. He let them have it. But before he let it have it, he gave the well a name, and he called it Esek, which means to contend or to quarrel. No matter what the situation we find ourselves in, I don't have time to quarrel with you. I got to keep digging. All right? You have to keep digging. All right? I have a promise from God, and the promise will be fulfilled. So he picked up and moved again. He moved once again. All right? And once he moved, he got to his second well and began digging again. All right? And once he began digging and got down to that certain sweet spot, water started gushing out the ground again. And who would you believe it? Mr. Hater came back around the corner, saying, quarreling, saying, this does not belong to you, this belongs to us. So Isaac said, okay, but I'm going to name this well. And he named the well Shibnah. I might be pronouncing it wrong. But the meaning of that well was called accusations and enmity. All right? And that could mean strife, or that can mean hostility. All right? But because when the enemy gets hostile, you can't allow him to I couldn't allow him to take me out of position. So I had to move on. And that's what he did. And then he went a little bit further down, and he dug the third well. But lo and behold, the herders did not follow him. This third well was in a very bad place, because for the herders to try to track him down to do the same thing he did the first two times, it's something was visually that they saw on this land that just wasn't right. And they probably said in their heads, it's no way in the world he can get anything to grow in there. He must be a fool to go down in there. So I ain't even bother with that. I'll let him have that. So, but nonetheless, he dug that third well into that probably horrible place, and lo and behold, water sprang up. And because the enemies didn't follow him, he named this one Rehoboth, meaning open spaces. The Lord makes room for us. Now, even though the enemy came up against me, I remembered the promise, and I kept digging, and I kept digging. So during the hostile times, I remember the promise that God gave me. Now, God has gave me open spaces. Even if God sends me to the valley, my God will always make a way in any situation. And he did just that for me and my descendants. All right? And lo and behold, once that had happened, later on that night, God came to me and presented himself to Isaac to reassure him that he still remembers the covenant that he had between Abraham and himself. And he's still gonna reciprocate that same covenant to him. And he will continue to uphold it. So Isaac created an altar to God and worshiped and prayed, even in the midst of the valley of famine, in the midst of all his enemies. He made time to pray and build an altar. He made time not just pray. He built an altar for God, and he got on his knees and prayed. Now, whether I have a job or not, the blessing of the Lord, I will bless the Lord at all times, and his praise shall continuously be in my mouth. All right? And lo and behold, the next day, after that time he spent with God, Abimelech, the king, came down. The same time, crazy thing, same time, they were building another well. That is just so crazy. But the king came down to confirm to Isaac, that's something that Isaac already knew. He sees that God is with him. So Isaac threw him a big feast. He cooked and everything, had a nice little time. And they sat down and they came up with an oath of agreement, a covenant, you may say, between them, that they will not harm each other, or there will be peace in the land that they live in. He will not attack them and they will not attack him. All right. Now, after the party was over, night fell, all went to sleep because they were all stuffed up and stuff. They all went to sleep, and the next morning they rose, and on their way out, they parted ways, and everyone took a copy of the oath that they made between each other. All right, and later on that afternoon, lo and behold, that well that they were digging when Abimelech came in, the servants dug it and they struck water again. All right, and he named that well Sheba, which means 7, or you may say the oath. See, the Lord will cause your enemies to restore back 7 times what he has stolen from you. See, understand, I said a lot in this small setting, but it's only to assure you that if you would dig in obedience, you will find what you're looking for. When we look at our situation and surroundings in our natural eyes and emotion, flesh, and feelings, it's hard to dig. It's hard to believe that you will find water. So remember the promise and trust our Father for everything that you need in life, and believe in your heart that he will provide. And also, please remember, in your digging, understand who, why, and what you're digging for. There are some things in life you must search to obtain, be it knowledge, favor, patience from God, but in all things gain an understanding relationship with him. All right. Until we meet again, God bless you, and follow his presence in the cloud of his glory. And y'all have a happy Mother's Day. God bless you. But I don't want to leave you yet. Just to cap it off, just for a little bit of insurance for anybody who has dealing with enemies, read Proverbs chapter 6, 30 through 31. It reads, "Man does not despise a thief if he steals to satisfy his soul with his hunger when he's hungry. But if he be found, he shall restore 7-fold. He shall give all the substance of his house." So the enemy got to give it back, regardless of what he do. I'm going to leave y'all with that. Y'all have a blessed Mother's Day.